Participating, the day you stopped needing her love was the day your power became undeniable. Because nothing is more attractive than a man who is complete on his own. When you needed her attention, her validation, her reassurance to feel secure, your energy was different. Participating, you might not have noticed it, but she did. Neediness doesn't always show up as desperation. Sometimes it hides behind constant texting, over-explaining, trying to fix every small shift in her mood, over-analyzing every delay in response. Participating, but underneath all of that behavior is one core message: I need you to feel okay. And the moment a woman senses that you need her emotionally, the dynamic shifts. Not because she's cruel, not because she wants control. Participating, but because human nature responds to strength. When someone relies on you for emotional stability, the attraction slowly begins to erode. The pressure builds. She feels responsible for your feelings, and responsibility is not romance. Participating, but something powerful happens when you reach a place where you genuinely don't need her love to feel complete. Your posture changes, your tone changes, your pace changes, you stop rushing, you stop trying to secure the connection, you stop fearing loss. Participate in that absence of fear is magnetic. Independence is attractive because it signals abundance. When you don't need one specific person to validate you, it implies you have options. It implies your life is full. It implies you have purpose beyond romance. Participating. And purpose is powerful. Think about the difference in your behavior. When you needed her, you might have checked your phone constantly. You might have adjusted your schedule around her availability. Participating, you might have hesitated to speak your true opinions out of fear of disagreement. That subtle self-editing shrinks your presence, but when you don't need her approval, you speak freely, you maintain your routines, you prioritize your goals. Participating, you don't chase conversations, you participate in them. You don't force plans, you extend invitations and allow her to meet you halfway. That shift is felt immediately. Neediness repels because it communicates insecurity. Participating, independence attracts because it communicates stability. A stable man is emotionally grounded. He enjoys her presence, but he doesn't collapse in her absence. He appreciates her affection, but he doesn't beg for it. He chooses her, but he does not require her. Participating, and here's the deeper truth: when you stop needing her, you start choosing her from a place of strength instead of fear. Fear says, don't leave me. Strength says, if you leave, I'll still be standing. That energy hits harder because it's rare. Participating, most men operate from fear of loss. Very few operate from confidence in themselves. When you no longer need her love to feel whole, your presence becomes calm, controlled, and powerful. You're no longer trying to gain something. Participating, you're simply offering an opportunity to be part of your world. And that's when your power truly begins to show. When you were emotionally attached to the outcome, whether she stayed, called, texted back, or reassured you, your energy carried tension. Participating, even if you try to hide it, it was there. You were invested not just in her, but in what she decided. And when your emotional state depends on someone else's choices, you slowly give away your center. That's when your frame weakens. Participating, emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop attaching your identity to the result. It means you can enjoy someone without fearing their departure, and that shift alone restores your power. When a man is attached to the outcome, participating overcorrects. If she seems distant, he increases effort. If she sounds uncertain, he tries to convince. If she pulls back, he leans forward. Every move becomes reactive, and reactivity signals instability. Participating, she feels that you are adjusting yourself based on her behavior, which unconsciously puts her in the dominant position. But when you detach emotionally from needing things to go a certain way, you stop reacting, you observe, you respond calmly. Participating, you allow space without panic, and that steadiness rebuilds your frame, your emotional foundation. A strong frame is simply this: you remain you regardless of what she does. If she's warm, you enjoy it. If she's distant, you don't collapse. If she's unsure, participating, you don't beg for certainty. You understand that attraction naturally flows and shifts. And instead of trying to control it, you stay rooted. That rooted energy is powerful because it feels safe and solid. A woman can sense when a man is internally stable. Participating, she can sense when he isn't shaken by minor changes. And that stability creates emotional gravity. When you don't need her validation, you stop performing for her. You don't send extra messages just to spark a reaction. Participating, you don't exaggerate your achievements to impress. You don't pretend to agree with everything just to avoid conflict. You become authentic again. Detachment also removes fear. And fear is a quiet destroyer of attraction. Fear of losing her makes you overanalyze. Participating, fear of rejection makes you hesitate. Fear of abandonment makes you cling. But when you accept that you'll be fine either way, your decisions become clean, direct, confident. You start leading instead of seeking approval. Participating and leadership is attractive because it shows certainty, not arrogance, not dominance, but quiet certainty in who you are and what you bring. She begins to feel that your world doesn't revolve around her mood swings or temporary emotions. Your life continues. Participating, your mission continues. Your standards remain intact. That consistency makes your presence feel stronger than before. Ironically, the less you emotionally depend on her staying, the more she feels your strength. Because now she knows you're there by choice, participating, not by need. And a man who stays by choice always feels more powerful than a man who stays out of fear. When you detach from the outcome, you don't lose control, you regain it. There's a subtle dynamic that exists in every romantic interaction. Participate, control over attention, not in a manipulative way, but in an energetic way. Whoever feels less dependent on the other person's attention naturally holds more emotional leverage. When you needed her love, her validation, her constant communication, participating, she could feel that your focus was locked in, your attention was guaranteed. And when something is guaranteed, it loses intensity. When she knew you would text first, reply instantly, adjust your schedule, and prioritize her no matter what, there was no uncertainty. Participating, you were emotionally predictable. Predictability creates comfort, but it can also reduce excitement and tension. Attraction thrives on a healthy level of uncertainty, not chaos, but the sense that your presence must be earned, not assumed. Participating, the moment you stopped needing her love, something shifted. Your attention was no longer automatic. You weren't waiting by the phone. You weren't rearranging your life around her availability. You weren't chasing reassurance. Participating, and when your attention became less predictable, its value increased. She may not consciously think, I lost control. But she feels it before. She could sense that if she pulled back, you would lean forward. If she delayed replying, you would double text. Participating, if she seemed distant, you would try harder. That dynamic gave her the emotional upper hand. Again, not maliciously, just naturally. But once you stopped reacting that way, the balance changed. Now, if she takes longer to respond, you don't chase her. She's distant. Participating, you mirror the energy instead of compensating for it. If she seems unsure, you give her space instead of convincing her, and that calm restraint creates tension. Tension isn't created by effort. It's created by contrast. Participating, when she realizes that your attention is no longer something she can automatically rely on, she becomes more aware of it. She notices when you're present. She notices when you're not. Your silence becomes louder than your words once were. Participating, attention is one of the most valuable currencies in modern relationships. People crave it. They measure their worth by it. And when you freely give it without standards, it feels common. But when you offer it selectively, intentionally, it feels special. Participating, you're not withdrawing to punish, you're not withholding to manipulate, you're simply no longer over-investing where you don't feel equal effort. That shift communicates self-worth. It communicates that your time and energy are valuable resources. Participating, and here's the deeper psychological layer: when someone feels they no longer fully control your attention, they instinctively try to regain it, not through logic, but through curiosity, through increased effort, through subtle re-engagement, because now, participating, instead of you pursuing her validation, she begins seeking your presence. That reversal is why your power hits harder now. You're no longer chasing her attention. You're allowing her to qualify for yours. When you were emotionally invested in needing her love, participating, your behavior was faster. Faster replies, faster decisions, faster emotional reactions. Everything felt urgent because deep down you were trying to secure something. When a man feels like he might lose a connection, he speeds up. He tries to do more, say more. Participating, prove more, but urgency often communicates fear, not confidence. The moment you stopped needing her, your pace changed. You no longer felt the need to immediately respond to every message. You didn't feel anxious as she took longer to reply. Participating, you stopped over-explaining your thoughts just to avoid misunderstandings. You became more measured, more deliberate, more composed. And that shift in tempo is powerful. Abundance energy changes how you move. When you believe she is your only option, participating, your behavior becomes tight, controlled by outcome. You analyze every word, you replay conversations in your head, you try to avoid mistakes, but when you know you're fine with or without her, you relax, you speak naturally. Participating, you act from instinct instead of insecurity. You don't fear silence in conversation, you don't rush to fill gaps. That calm presence feels different. You start observing more. Instead of constantly trying to impress, you watch her actions. Participating, you pay attention to consistency, you notice effort. And when something feels off, you don't panic, you simply adjust. That observational strength creates depth. It shows emotional maturity. Your body language changes too. You sit back more. Participating, you maintain steady eye contact. You don't fidget with nervous energy. You don't lean in too quickly. You allow her to come toward you subtly. Your posture communicates, I'm comfortable here. Comfort signals confidence. When you don't need her love, participating, you stop negotiating your standards. You don't tolerate flaky behavior just to keep her around. You don't laugh at jokes you don't find funny just to seem agreeable. You don't suppress your opinions to avoid conflict. You become solid in who you are. Participating, that solidity hits harder than charm ever could. You also stop over-investing emotionally before it's earned. You don't reveal everything about yourself instantly. You don't promise future plans prematurely. Participating, you allow the connection to unfold naturally instead of trying to accelerate it. That restraint builds tension, it builds curiosity, it builds anticipation, and anticipation fuels attraction. When your behavior slows down and becomes intentional, participatance, there's less chasing, less proving, less performing. Instead, there's grounded presence. She senses that you're not trying to win her, you're evaluating whether she fits into your world. That subtle shift changes the dynamic completely. Participating, you're no longer operating from fear of loss, you're operating from confidence and abundance. And abundance creates patience. Patience creates mystery. Mystery creates intrigue. Your power hits harder not because you became louder or more dominant, participating, but because you became calmer, and calm men are the hardest to replace. When you needed her approval, even in subtle ways, a part of you was performing. You might not have called it that, but it was there. You adjusted your tone to be more impressive. Participating, you filtered your opinions to avoid disagreement. You emphasize your strengths a little more than usual. You try to be the version of yourself you thought she would want. And that effort, no matter how small, creates tension inside a man. Participating, because when you are trying to impress, you are not relaxed. You're calculating. You think about what to say next. You analyze how she reacted. You replay conversations in your head wondering if you said the right thing. Participating, that constant mental management drains your natural confidence. And ironically, the more you try to impress someone, the less impressive you become. The moment you stop needing her validation, that performance disappears. Participating, you no longer feel pressure to prove your value. You don't exaggerate your ambitions. You don't highlight your achievements hoping to be more attracted. You simply exist as you are. And authenticity carries a weight that performance never can. Participating. When a man is no longer trying to win approval, his energy becomes steady. He laughs freely, disagrees calmly when necessary. He doesn't rush to correct himself if she challenges him. He's comfortable with who he is, even if she doesn't fully agree or approve. Participating in that comfort creates strength, because now your words are not tools to gain affection. They're expressions of who you are. You don't seek constant reassurance. You don't fish for compliments. You don't subtly try to make her jealous to validate your worth. Participating, you stop managing perception and start living naturally. That natural rhythm feels grounded, and grounded energy is rare. Most people are constantly seeking validation through social media, through relationships, through attention. Participating, when someone encounters a man who doesn't crave approval, it stands out. It feels secure, it feels stable, it feels safe. There's also a deeper layer to this. When you stop trying to impress her, you shift from auditioning to evaluating. Instead of thinking, participating, how can I make her like me? You begin thinking, is she aligned with my standards? That internal shift changes your posture, your tone, your timing.
Pode
You
parar
become
aí.
selective. Selectivity signals value. A man who needs approval will accept almost anything to keep it. Participating, a man who doesn't need it will walk away if his standards aren't met.
Pode
And
dar
that
um
willingness
beijo
to walk away
nela.
communicates confidence louder than any charm tactic ever could. She begins to feel that your presence is not something she automatically owns. Participating, it's something she experiences by being aligned with you. That creates a subtle respect. Trying to impress creates effort. Being yourself creates power, and power that comes from authenticity always hits harder than power that comes from performance. Participate. A lot of men think their power comes from proving someone wrong, from showing her what she lost, from succeeding loudly after rejection, but real power doesn't come from rejection. It comes from self-sufficiency. Participating, it comes from building a life that feels complete with or without someone standing next to you. When you depended on her love to feel valuable, your happiness was fragile. One cold message could shift your mood. One canceled plan could ruin your evening. Participating, one moment of distance could create doubt in your mind. That fragility wasn't weakness, it was attachment. But attachment without self-sufficiency makes your emotional state unstable. Now that you don't need or love to feel whole, something changes internally. Participating in your mood isn't dictated by her responses. Your confidence doesn't fluctuate based on her interest level. Your self-worth doesn't rise and fall with her attention. That emotional independence creates steadiness, and steadiness is power. Participating. Self-sufficiency means you have purpose outside of romance. You have goals you're chasing. You have standards you uphold. You have routines, discipline, direction. When a woman senses that she is a complement to your life rather than the center of it, participating in your presence feels stronger. You're not seeking completion. You're offering partnership. There's a major difference between wanting someone and needing someone. Wanting is choice. Needing is dependency. Choice feels empowering. Dependency feels heavy. Participating, when you show up as a man who chooses her, not because you're afraid to be alone, but because you genuinely appreciate her, that energy hits differently. You don't cling. You don't overact. You don't panic when things aren't perfect. Participating, you're willing to walk away if the dynamic isn't healthy. And that willingness signals that you value yourself first. Self-sufficiency also changes your communication. You speak directly. You don't hide your standards to avoid losing her. Participating, you don't compromise your boundaries for temporary comfort. You're comfortable being misunderstood if it means staying authentic. That authenticity builds respect, and respect fuels attraction far more than approval ever will. Participating, when she realizes that your happiness isn't tied to her presence, she sees that you're strong enough to stand alone. That strength makes your interest feel genuine instead of desperate. It makes your affection feel intentional instead of needy. Participating, your power hits harder now, not because you became colder, but because you became complete. You stopped looking outward for validation and started building inward confidence. You stopped seeking emotional rescue and started leading your own life. Participating, and when a man leads his own life, anyone who joins him feels like they're stepping into something solid. True power isn't about control, it's about independence. And independence is what makes your presence unforgettable.